Namo Amida Butsu. Growing up in Texas during the 60s, 70s, and even when I got older in the 80s, looking back on it, people in these parts knew basically absolutely nothing about a vegetarian diet. Indeed, most people in the West knew very little about living off of a mostly plant-based diet. The common assertion, successfully cultivated by the Meat, Egg, and Dairy Association, was that you would get sick, you would become anemic, your bones would become brittle from lack of calcium, you would have to be put on an IV and fed glucose or even get blood transplants. My mother used to tell me all these horror stories, including, David, you can't just live without meat. You have to have some actual real food. They're going to do all this, and you can get scurvy even. I heard so much of this crap growing up. And all of it's crap. The other day I had someone come up to me and say, I'd mentioned that I was a vegetarian, and they're like, really? Do you ever get sick? And I said, no. I've been a vegetarian for well over 10 years, and I don't have any major health problems at all. Her response was, oh, that's interesting. I think a big part of this not only is due to the propaganda from the meat industry, the egg and the dairy industries as well, but the fact that the media has played into that because of sponsorship by these industries. And when you hear about someone getting sick on a plant-based diet, vegan, vegetarian, whatever, it's usually some extremist kook who lives off of nothing but grapefruit and their own piss. However, people in the East have known for millennia that there's nothing to living off of a vegetarian, plant-based diet. It's not that big a deal. I remember hearkening back to how I was raised. I was always deeply influenced by the hippie movement of the 60s, because I grew up in the 60s. Obviously I was. And I always wanted to be a vegetarian. Something about it from my past karma made me fascinated by the whole Eastern philosophy aspect of the hippie movement and the vegetarianism involved in that spiritual evolution, that the mysticism of becoming a vegetarian. And I wanted so badly to become a vegetarian, but my parents would balk at this and tell me, you're going to get sick. We can't afford, David, to take you to the doctor. They're going to hook you up to IVs. They're gonna you're going to get sick. The doctor's going to think we're not taking care of you. We're not feeding you properly. You have to have meat, David. You don't have to have meat. As a matter of fact, it's very bad for you to have meat. You don't need to have any animal products, really. I've lived quite healthily without the slightest bit of problem on a nearly 100% vegan diet. Just this much lacto-vegetarian. And to the point now, it's just, it's a way of life. It's just food, guys. It's not that big of a deal. I've had, one of the questions you get, every vegetarian and vegan get asked is, where do you get your protein? You know, I've thought about becoming vegetarian, but, you know, I need my protein. I live a very active lifestyle. Everything has protein in it. Well, there's a lack of vitamins. Wrong. I mean, anyone who lives off of a non-extreme, whole foods, plant-based diet can live very successfully. Now, I mean, there are certain exceptions to everything. There are people with allergies and this, that, and the other. But overall, the average human being is not going to become sick by giving up meat, eggs, and dairy. It's a nothing burger for the most part. Of course, you're always going to have that one person. You know, I mean, there's every kind of anomaly in human biology you can think of. People, you know, there's some people that become allergic to their own, the chemicals in their own body. You know, I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. But as a society, on the whole, we are trained to believe you're going to get sick if you don't eat animal products. Excuse me. I made a video on my main channel a couple of hours ago, and I noted weather is kind of cool and crisp here in Houston. I love being vegetarian. And I use vegan and vegetarian interchangeably. Just to just to denote the fact I live off of a plant-based diet. It's not that big of a deal to give up meat. And by meat, I mean fish. I mean clams, oysters, poultry. Yes, fish is meat. You're not a vegetarian if you just eat fish. Any animals you eat that's carnivorous, you're not a vegetarian if you eat animals of any kind. Snails, frog legs. Now there's ovo-vegetarian, ovo-lacto-vegetarian, lacto-vegetarian, and vegan. Ovo-vegetarian or ovo-lacto-vegetarian is someone who eats eggs. Lacto-vegetarian is someone who eats some milk products. I can refer to myself as a lacto-vegetarian who's mainly vegan, because every now and then I will go to the Asian mart and I will buy a certain kind of vegetarian meat that's lacto-vegetarian. That is to say, it has as one of its ingredients whey. It's a very slight content of this milk product, but it, you know, that keeps it from being qualified as vegan. But most of the time, nearly every single meal is strictly vegan. Now, what is a vegan? A lacto-vegetarian is someone who eats milk products. An ovo-vegetarian or ovo-lacto-vegetarian is someone who eats eggs and eggs or milk products in addition to a plant-based diet. A vegan is someone who eats no animal products, and this includes honey, because vegans tend to see honey as an exploitation and enslavement of bees, which to a certain extent it is. I avoid honey as a rule. I avoid eggs. I don't even consider any kind of animal flesh of any kind, whether sea creature, mammal, bird, whatever. But the thing is, you don't need eggs or dairy or any kind of animal products in order to stay healthy if you follow a couple of basic rules. One of the things I do daily is I take a vitamin B12 tablet it's suitable for vegans and vegetarians. I just buy it at the local grocery store. I don't have to order it online. You can. But B12 is the only thing really lacking in a vegan diet. I mean, you can get B12 from other sources. One good source is nutritional yeast. That is a good source of B12. It's in the component of a lot of vegan cheeses and cheese sauces. It's also very delicious. But in terms of most other types of vitamins, you pretty well have that covered if you eat leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, if you eat carrots, if you eat broccoli, and you don't have to eat tons of these things. Just like I said, just eat moderately and enjoy what you eat. It's not hard being a vegetarian, but I look back on what I was told and what I read. It was like you have to be very careful if you are a strict vegetarian. And back when I was a kid, they didn't have the word vegan. They referred to vegans as strict or ultra strict vegetarians. And it's not that hard. What is hard to me is the concept, because I'm an ethical vegetarian. I don't live a plant-based diet or have a plant-based diet just for my health. I don't really care that much. I do it for karma. I do it out of respect to the Buddha, first and foremost. Because in the sutras, the Buddha eventually taught that ultimately to be a disciple of the Buddha was to be a vegetarian and to abstain from the eating of all forms of animal flesh. There were some provisions made by the Buddha in other sutras for those who were not at the point where they could let go of a meat diet, a carnivorous diet. But before he passed on into nirvana, before Shakyamuni let go of his life here in this Saha realm, he did make a mandate saying, if you truly are my disciple, no disciple of mine, and that includes lay people as well as monks, will partake of meat, the flesh of animals, for any reason. And this is why I am a vegetarian. This is why I choose not to eat meat. And now I've gotten to the point where I've said before, whenever I'm in the grocery store, I try not to even go near the meat aisle. I get sick. I get nauseous. It makes me want to vomit. The stench. It smells like rotting flesh. And I'm not being dramatic when I say this. It smells like rotting flesh. It makes me sick. I mean, not to the point where I actually throw up in the aisle of the grocery store, but sometimes pretty close. There are times when I'll check out the price to see if the Impossible patties have been marked down, or Beyond Beef or Beyond Sausage. I love the Beyond Sausage, are marked down. And they have that in the meat aisle, which is a good thing. There should be that option offered. But now, at this point in my life, having been a vegetarian, having been a person living on an almost completely plant-based diet for over 10 years, at this point in my life, I have not even the slightest curiosity that would lead me to taste animal flesh, because I see it for what it is. It's animal flesh. It's not meat. It's animal flesh. It's the flesh of an involuntarily imprisoned, farmed, tortured, and executed animal. This is not food to me. This is not healthy to me. But more importantly, this is not ethical to me. My ethics, my life is devoted to serving and honoring Amitabha Buddha, the Buddha of infinite light and life, and all Buddhas through him. Because by serving Amitabha Buddha, I serve and respect and venerate all Buddhas whenever I serve, respect, and venerate Amitabha. Because Amitabha Buddha is the greatest of all Buddhas. He is the Buddha of infinite light and life. He is my Supreme Lord. This is why I'm a vegetarian. He is the reason I am a vegetarian. And so think about that. Especially if you are a Buddhist, before you make an excuse to eat meat. Yes, you can find justifications for doing so, but do you really want to? I know I don't. Namo Amida Butsu.